Hi everyone and welcome to this second Autodesk Inventor 2019 video tutorial. So today we'll be 3D modeling a piston. I've just created a new project, metric standard mill IPT part. So I've created my drawing. So I'll now go to my origin so I can see my planes. So I'll click on Start 2D Sketch, and I generally use the XY plane, but because we're drawing a piston, I will start with the XZ plane because I want my piston to be upright. So click on the corner of the plane, and Inventor automatically will select the plane. So make sure that you're facing upright. Now I'll go on my parameters. I'll click here where it says add numeric, and I'll call this dia of diameter, and I'll make it 81 mil. So I'll accept it. I will now draw a circle. I will then apply a coincident constraint between the center and the origin. So now, as you can see, my circle is fixed there. The diameter can vary, but the position of the center cannot. I will undo this to show you that by drawing a circle directly on the center, so it's now you can see snapping and turning green. You can see the symbol next to my X on the menu that is applying a coincident constraint. So by drawing the circle directly on the origin, Inventor has applied the coincident constraint that we manually applied earlier. Now I'll give it a dimension, and instead of typing 81, I will type in equals DIA. So right now that was using my user parameter. So this should be enough. Let's click on Finish Sketch. So now I'll zoom out. I'll click on, before I click on Extrude, I'll go on Parameters again, and I will create another parameter and call it Depth. I'll make it 55 mil. Click on Done. Now I'll go on Extrude, and here under Extents, I'll type in Depth. Before I click OK, would just like to show you a few things on the extrude menu. So we can choose whether we want to extrude a solid or a surface. So we'll stick to solid. We can also choose whether we want to extrude it in upright or downwards, or equally in both directions, which is what we will do now, or asymmetric, so more in one direction than on the other. So we'll leave it on symmetric. You can also choose a distance or 2. We don't have any more objects, so it won't make sense now. I'll leave it as distance. If you go to where it says more, you can taper the extrusion. So let's say taper it by 10 degrees. So as you can see, it's tapered. We won't taper it in this case, but it was just to show you the functionality of the extrude tool. So I'll accept this, click on OK. I will now start a new sketch. I will select my either my XY or my YZ, it doesn't really matter. So I'll select my XY. The next thing to do, I'll show you what's happening. So we're sketching right on the center of the piston. The only problem is that we can't see through the plane. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there is an option called Slice Graphics, or you can alternatively press F7. So I'm going to click on it. So now we can see a section view of our part. The only problem is that we don't really have real references. So the next thing that I will be doing is I'll use my project cut edges command, and Inventor will project the cut section of the piston, as you can see here. If I turn my slice graphics on and off, so now we can draw directly on it. So the next thing that we'll be doing is I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I'm going to dimension it now. So I'll click on this line, make it 8 mil, and now I'll make this 1.5 mil. So the next thing that we'll be doing is I'm going to use a collinear constraint and make this line collinear to this line. So they are now both collinear. So if I move my rectangle, so now the next thing that we'll be doing, in order to properly define it, I will give it a dimension, and dimension the top of this line to the top of this line. I'll make it 5 mil. So this is going to be the recess for my piston rings. I could draw the other two just below, or I could, for instance, use a rectangular pattern, select it, and pattern it around, but there is a much easier way of doing it, so I'll leave it as it is. I'll finish my sketch. So now that we've got this, I will use my revolve command. I will select my cutout, and now I need to select an axis. So in my case, if I go to my origin, my y-axis is right at the center of it, so I'll select my y-axis. Otherwise, you could have drawn an axis on the sketch and use that. Okay, so now what we have to be careful with is the different options. What this does is joining the profile to the existing one, so it wouldn't change anything. So we need to select the cut option. So it cuts it out, and now click on OK. So that's how we're opening now there. Now the next thing I will do, I will use my rectangular pattern, but this time in 3D rather than in 2D. Select my feature from the model tree. As you can see, this is already the selection tool for features is already on. So I'll select my extrusion. Now I need to give it a direction, so I'll click here, click on the y-axis. So it's placing it upwards, which is not right, so I'll flip the direction. And now I want 3 of them. So here you type in the quantity, and the spacing between them 5 mil. So that's exactly what I want, so I'll press OK. And that's it. The openings for our piston rings are done. So now I'm going to start another sketch on the XY plane again. I am going to repeat the same step, slice graphics and project cut edges. So the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to draw a circle. Now I'm going to make sure that my circle is vertically constrained. So I'm going to click on the center point and origin. So my circle is now vertically constrained, as you can see. If I move it sideways, it doesn't separate from the center line. And now I will give it a dimension from the bottom edge. So it's going to be 21 mil. And my diameter is going to be 20 mil. So that's done. I'll finish my sketch. I'll type in E of extrude. I will select my circle section. Use symmetric, so it goes in both directions. And where it says extends, I'm going to say all. So it goes all the way across the solid, and I'll change from join to cut. So it will cut through the hole. So I'll click on OK and accept it. So that's my piston now done. So now I will start another 2D sketch. But instead of using a plane this time, I'm going to use a face. So I'm going to click on this face. Now I'm going to make sure that I'm going to click on my bottom face and make that you can read the word bottom horizontally. The next thing that I will be doing a rectangle, but instead of a 2-point rectangle, I will use a 2-point center. So I'll first select my center, so it has now applied the coincident constraint, and now I'll type in my dimensions directly. So the length will be 38 mil and the height will be 19 mil. Press enter. So that's the shape for our cutout. I will now exit my sketch. Now I will go my extrude command again. Swap the direction. Here, instead of depth, I'm going to type in 40 mil. So that's our first cutout. I will now start another sketch at my bottom face. So I will use my project cut edges again. The next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to draw a circle around it. It is going to be 70 mil. Now I want to draw a line. Just make sure that it's vertical. Now I will use my control, right click, and apply a horizontal constraint from the midpoint, which is this green dot over here, to my origin. So my line is now in line with the origin. I will give it a dimension. So that's going to be 25 mil. And I will now make a spacing of, I'll go on dimension, select my line, select my center, and my spacing will be 24.5 mil. And I will now draw another line going across until it intersects with the circle, and do the same here at the bottom. Now I'm going to apply the trim command, so either click here on trim or type in X, and I can trim my circle. So this line for some reason is not fully constrained. I'll give it a horizontal constraint. So now my line is fully constrained. I have my first feature. So now I have to draw my second feature. So I'm going to draw a circle. I'll make it 52 mil here, and I'll apply those 2 dimensions again. So that should be 16, and that should be 4. So that's not correct. I will now draw a line across from here. Make sure that it's horizontal. I will now give this line a dimension. So type in D to the center, and we'll make these 7.8 mil. Actually 17.5 mil. So now I'm going to use this line to trim my circle underneath. So that should be enough. I'll also trim this side of the line, this side. I will now make sure that if I move my line up, I'll make sure that that point is coincident here. I will now make this line 15 mil. So I'll now draw another line that goes up from the end point up by 5 and now up to the center. Make sure that it's horizontal. And now we'll use my offset command, select this circle and click here. So we've got our arc now. I will draw another line from the center. Now I'm going to use this line in order to trim around this arc and this arc, and this. So I can now get rid of the line and I have this geometry now. So the next thing that I will do is I'll draw another line from anywhere up here all the way across. I will now make sure that my midpoint, I'll move my line up, make sure that my midpoint is coincident with the origin. I'll now right click on the line and select construction. So it's now a construction line, so it won't interfere with the features. So I can now use the mirror command. So I'll select mirror, and I can now mirror all of these entities. Probably makes more sense before I mirror that to draw another line, another horizontal line. Again, use a coincident constraint from the midpoint to this midpoint. Right click and turn it into a construction line, so it stays static. And now we can use the mirror command and mirror, use shift left click to deselect. So I'm going to use my red selection tool to select everyone that I want to select. So I'm going to mirror all of that. Has already been selected. I'm going to select my mirror line and click on apply. So now I'm going to apply the same thing again. I'm going to select all of these, go on the mirror command, and my mirror line is going to be this line over here. I'll try again. Mirror line, select this line, hit apply, click on done. Okay, so this is all drawn. We need to make sure that it's fully constrained, so I'll enter the required dimensions. So this needs an arc, this needs a length also, this needs a distance to the center. So now my sketch is fully constrained. So I can proceed to finish the sketch. I can now use the extrude command, select all the profiles, swap the distance and make sure that it's on the cut option. The distance will be 32 mil. So click on OK. I have just realized that it did not cut out this 2 bits, so I'll go back to it, edit my sketch, and make this circle maybe 41 mil and see what happens. So my only problem is that they are not fully connected. So I'll delete these. And I will draw an arc across the points and oversize it a little bit. Give it a dimension. And now we'll mirror it across. So I'll select my arc, select my mirror line, click on apply, and close it. And I'll delete the old one. So I'll go and finish sketch, and now it seemed to work. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. So I will now start another sketch. I'm going to use this phase now. I am going to use my slice graphics again, and I'm going to project my cut edges once again. I'm now going to draw a triangle that goes from this corner up to here roughly. Now another line from here roughly to here, and another line that goes from here to here. Now I can give those two lines dimensions, so make sure you select only the line. Right now it's only selecting. I'll pre-select the line first, type in dimension. So it's going to be 12 mil. And it's not letting me select this one. I'll try the same thing again. And this one is going to be 28. So that seems correct. I'll finish my sketch. I will now use my extrude tool again. So type in E, select your feature, and I'm going to extrude it in the opposite direction, 5 mil. So I'm going to click on OK. So I've got that already. I can now use my 3D mirror tool. Either select the feature on the actual model or on the model tree. Now I'm going to select my mirror plane, which is going to be my YZ plane, and click on OK. So I've got the other one now, and now I'm going to apply the same. I'm going to select both mirror 1 and extrusion 1. Click on mirror, select your XY plane so it can be mirrored on the other side. So that's all done now. Now I'm going to use the chamfer command, and I'm going to apply a distance of 15 mil, and I'm going to select these edges. So it opens up a little bit. Now I'm going to click on OK, so the command is executed. So now I'm going to apply the chamfer tool again. So instead I'm going to choose a distance of 10 millimeters, and I'm going to select these 4 edges. Click on apply, and that should be your chamfer done. So I'm now going to apply another chamfer. In this case I'll make it 12 millimeters, and I'll select these edges. Click on apply. Now as you can see, we have a very sharp transition between the chamfers and these edges. So in order to soften that a bit, we're going to use a fillet command, and I'm going to apply a radius of 100 mil, and I'm going to select these edges. So that looks a little bit better. The next fillet will be 10 mil, and I will apply it to these 4 corners. Again, if you select an edge by accident, you can always hold shift and left click to deselect. So that's this fillet done. So I'm going to apply another fillet, this time 15mm, and I will select these few edges. Click on apply. So now I'm going to add another 2mm fillet, and this time I'm going to select these corners and these edges. I will do the same here. Click on apply. I am now going to start drawing another sketch, this time on the XY plane as well. I'll use my slice graphics once again, and I'll use this time, instead of using project cut edges, I'm going to use project geometry. So what this does, you can project all the geometry. So for example, I can project these edges, any geometry that's not necessarily flat. So those 2 lines should be fine for now. So I'll go on my front view, and I will also project this line over here. So I'm now going to draw another line, and I'm going to make this line 5mm. So I can now draw an arc from this very end to this very end, and then the height is going to be there. So now I could close this profile and cut extrude like we did earlier, but instead I will show you an easier way, so we don't even have to draw this section here, the full section. So I'm going to use the split tool. So I'm going to click on split. I'm going to find my split tool, which is here. I've just realized that I'm on the split face tool. We don't want to split a face. Here at the bottom you can split a solid. We don't want to split it, we want to trim it. So go on the second or middle option, trim solid. I have already selected my split tool, and now it's asking me what side I want to remove. So I want to remove the bottom side, so I'll switch. So the arrow is now pointing down, so when I click on apply, it looks like it failed to do it. So I will try again. I will re-edit this sketch. This can happen sometimes. So I will now try to do it the other way, the way we're initially supposed to do it. So I'll draw a line underneath all the way up to here and up. Just realized this line is not intersecting, so I'll delete it. I'll delete this line again. I will now draw my line. Make sure that is snapping with this. So yeah, just draw something like that, just so it covers the whole section. And now it just needs a dimension there. I'll delete this line and make sure that I have a single line instead. So that's all done. I'll click on Finish Sketch. I'll use the Extrude tool, select my profile, both directions, through all, and cut. So you will cut through all of this. So I'll now click on OK. So that's it. It cut the curve around my piston, which is exactly what I wanted. So we can now proceed to the next step. So I'm now going to start a sketch on maybe this face. Now I'll use my project geometry. Before I slice graphics, I'll actually select my project geometry and project all of these. See how it looks like. Yes, that's exactly what I wanted. So I will now use my circle tool and draw a circle that's going to be 62 mil diameter. So that should be enough. I will now draw a line from here to here and from here to here. I will now do the same here. Draw another line there. Up to here. Up to here. And up to here. Do the same here. And I'm going to do the same here as well. So I can now use the trim command and get rid of all of these corners. I'll hit escape. I will delete the rest of my circle. I will also delete this. Click on the projection. Click again on the projection symbol, right click and click on delete. So you can now delete all of these projection symbols. So select, delete. So at the moment they will only interfere with what we want to do. And now I'll do the same with this. So I can now mirror these two. First, before I mirror them, I'll draw two construction lines. So let's say vertical line here, horizontal line here, and do the same we did earlier. Use the coincident constraint to constrain from the midpoint to the midpoint, and midpoint to midpoint. I can select these two lines, right click, construction, right click, construction, and this time I will use the lock command and lock both of them. And now I can use these two construction lines to mirror my objects across. So I can use the mirror command. I can now select these two objects, select my mirror line, click on apply. I can now use the mirror command again, select this object, select my mirror line, click on apply, click on done. So we just now need a few dimensions. So we need the radius for this curve, the radius for this one. We also need to know the height of this line, the length of that line, and the radius for this one, and the height of this line. So I've just noticed we're missing these two lines across. So I'll select them again. I'll use the mirror command. Select the lines, mirror line, use that across, click on apply. So our sketch is now ready. So I'll finish my sketch. I'll use the extrude command and I will now select each one of those. So I'll select the cut option. Swap the direction. And say through all. So up to there. So that would be correct. It looks like there is something wrong with our sketch, so I'll right click, go and recover. So it's telling us that there is some problem with this geometry here. So I'll open up my sketch. Probably it's easier to just delete it. That was probably what was causing the issue. So I'll delete that, draw another line, use this as a snap. Now I'll delete this dimension, delete this line, delete this old reference, and now I'm going to redraw it. So I'll redimension this. Redimension the positioning. So I'll align this to my center. So it's now fully aligned. I will now set this line in reference to my add an equal constraint between these two lines. Probably it's easier to just delete this one at the bottom and mirror this across. So that's done. I will finish my sketch, except I will now delete the extrusion, cancel the consumed sketches and features. I'll go and extrude again. I'll select my features. I'll use the cut option through all and switch the direction and click on OK. So this time was completely fine. I've just realized I forgot to select one of them, so I'm going to double click on my extrusion, select profile and add this one, and I'm going to click on OK again. So that seems fine now. I will now apply a 2mm fillet around these edges. So 8 edges selected, as you can see. I'm going to click on apply. Now I'm going to apply a 0.25 of a mil chamfer. Sorry, it's not fillet. So 0.25, and I'm going to select all of these edges for the rings and click on apply. So that's now done. I will now fillet more corners to 2mm. So I'm going to select all of these corners here, so we have better geometry. click on apply. I'm now going to fill it to 0.5 mil. Instead of selecting edge, I'm going to select the loop function, and I'm going to select all of these loops. Now I'm going to apply a fillet of 6.5 mil to these edges in order to soften the transition. Click on apply. I'm now going to apply another 0.25 of a mil fillet to this edge here. Click on apply. Now I will start a sketch on this top face. Select my project geometry. Now I'm going to use the offset command, and I'm going to offset this by 5 mil. I'll finish my sketch, and now we'll extrude it by down by 1 mil probably. Yes, so now you could probably add more features here at the top and for the combustion, but I think it's enough work for this tutorial. Otherwise I could keep on going and make it 3 or 5 hours long, adding more and more features to the piston and making it more smooth and sorting out every single edge. But I think this is enough work to show you the basic skills to 3D model of a piston. So this will be it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.